We recognise the Kaurna people as the custodians of the lands and waters of the Adelaide region and pay our respects to elders past and present. We acknowledge and respect the Kaurna people's cultural, spiritual, physical and emotional connection with their land, waters and community, and we extend that respect to all Aboriginal and First Nations people. Welcome back to Amy and I'm Amy Matthews. It's kind of the end of winter. I'm feeling it, even though it's a nice sunny day. I've got my tea today and I'm feeling a bit limp, so I'm glad I've got three of the chattiest people I know here with me. So I'd like to welcome Justina Ashman.
Hi.
And Millie Heffernan.
That's me.
And then we have an extra special guestie who's actually, I have a long history on podcasts with. We have Kathleen Stanley, who was my co-host on Love on Campus and who is a PhD student studying Christmas romance and hope and community and all kinds of lovely things. So welcome, Kathleen.
Hello, thanks for having me.
And this month is academic month where we're talking about being academics and writers. So I think I've talked a bit last week about how we ran an academic symposium last year and then we've produced a special issue of Text Journal, which is out this month. And so I thought we'd talk to all three of you are part of that process of the symposium and the journal, so we can talk about that. And then all of us are in a romance research hub at Flinders University together and we can talk a little bit about how that works and what we do. So I thought it's just kind of like a behind the scenes chat about being academics.
A casual chat.
Casual
about being
chat.
academics.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with the symposium.
Yeah.
And tell people what that was.
So it's 1 year ago this month.
Oh, wow. It feels like longer than that, actually. I was going to say not long, but it feels like way longer than that. And that was held at RWA, which is Romance Writers of Australia, for anyone who doesn't know. That was held at their annual conference, and it was here in Adelaide, which was really nice. None of us had to travel too far, and
It's much cheaper.
and it's cheaper. And we held an academic symposium.
And that was interesting as well because it's an academic symposium that is attached to an industry event, which I found really great actually because you're in the same. I mean, a lot of us also attended both. We attended the Romance Writers of Australia conference as well as the academic day on the Friday when which we ran, but you're sort of in amongst the very thing that you're studying and writing about, and it has that community vibe of like everyone is either one of or a combination of a romance reader, writer, researcher. Yeah, it was just a really great vibe.
And it was so interesting how many people turned up to the symposium on the Friday too.
It was rammed. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
like it was a small room, and I've run it once before when it was in Adelaide in 2016. And Justina, I think you were around then.
I volunteered at that one, but I was doing like desk
The workshop
and
or
other
something.
things, and I wasn't. Yeah.
So we were in a slightly bigger room last time, but this time, like the room held like 50-something people. And it was rammed. There were people sitting on the floor, standing around the walls at the back and sides. It really showed there's a real hunger in sort of the publishing and writing community to hear about scholarship.
Which was really eye-opening because I think there's a bit of a tradition that there's sort of an us versus them sometimes. And I think a lot of writers feel a bit threatened by the idea of academics coming into the space.
Which is weird for us because we do both.
Yeah, I know. And I think they forget that, like, not in a bad way, because sometimes if you're not in this world, you don't know. And I think academics can come off as really scary, but it's like nice to see that shift.
I also loved seeing and hearing research from other people doing romance research because we're really lucky with Amy at Flinders in that we have like a cohort now. I think
There's
this
so
is very different to when
many
you
of you.
started your PhD.
I was
You were the only one.
Yeah.
I was so glad when you applied. I was like, someone I can talk romance with.
We used to have like 5-hour meetings that were supposed to be 1-hour supervisions because we would be so excited to just talk to somebody else about romance, both academically and just like, what book have you been reading?
Yes, someone who's actually read the books. It doesn't like, because I have had, I'm not going to name and shame, but I have had an academic colleague who's referred to the desperate women who read these books. I'm like, hold on a minute.
Oh boy.
It's me.
Yeah. But I loved seeing
It's
the
all
other
of us
research.
secretly.
Yeah. The other research being done in this area, other institutions, and just getting a chance to talk to, hear what else is happening. And it feels like there's actually quite a lot happening.
Because I feel like we hear a lot about, I'm not a romance researcher specifically, but we hear a lot about each other's work because we're always talking about each other's work, of course. So it was interesting to see what people from other institutions were doing as well and being like, wow, that's so interesting. Nobody here is doing that. Let's hear about it. Because there was a lot of really, I think it's very easy to get into a niche with romance because there's so much to explore. So to see other people's niches, like there was the one on arranged marriage romances, which was so interesting. Oh, it was great. It was really fascinating.
And that's an interesting point there too, Millie, about you not being squarely in the space, is I think often, and I don't know if it's gendered or whether it's about commercial fiction and elitism, but there's a sense that if you investigating romance or into romance, that you're not into anything else, that you're like ghettoized off. But actually, if you scratch the surface and look at popular romance academics, they're often doing heaps of other things. Do you know, like they're doing other kinds of fictions, other kinds of theory, and actually people who are into popular fictions are usually into a huge range of fiction.
It's almost like you can have multiple interests.
No.
Stop it. And you can be multifaceted.
No, pick a lane.
It's true. I was the opposite. I came in different genre fiction and like fantasy and urban fantasy, and just by listening to everyone talking about romance, got really interested in romance. And so now I read more romance than I ever used to at all. And I enjoy it. You can enjoy it all.
You can have it all.
You can have it all.
The thing I find is I go to like a symposium or I talk to you guys. Like I've had so many supervision meetings this week, and all that happens is I get off a meeting and I'm on my Kindle and I've bought 50 books. And I went to that symposium and I was just like, I want to know everything about all these things. Like I feel like after seeing Jodi McAlister and Amy Burge, I want to go read all the bonkbusters.
Oh my God.
So many.
Goldfish stuff. What? Sorry for those who don't know what that means.
That is in the tech special issue, that the paper that Jodi delivered, the article based on that paper is in the special issue. So,
but that's why I think stuff like this symposium is so great, and the text special issue that's coming out of it, because I don't have time to read 20 bonkbusters, and I don't have time to read every arranged marriage romance book ever written. So to be able to listen to and then read about experts in that niche talking about it means I can still kind of get that experience, even though I don't have the time to read every book that exists.
Yeah.
Especially in romance. I mean, because romance is insane. The amount of books that come out a month, especially
a day almost.
Not just trad published, but self-published. You add both together and you've just got an insane amount of books that are coming out. Nobody can read it all. No. And there's so many subgenres. And so it is exactly what you said. It's so nice when you've got people who like to dig into one niche, because you kind of get a taste.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, maybe I'll actually give some of those books a go.
And I feel like the more you learn about romance, the more you realise that making sweeping generalisations about the genre is just not... It's just hard to actually do that, because it is so varied and so large. Like there's so many kinds of books and kinds of writing in it.
Yeah, it's, you know what I find fascinating about that is if you go to a romance writers group of some kind, so we have essay romance writers here in South Australia, but there's also RWA, is that you'll mention an author who might be a New York Times bestseller, and you'll be talking to people who've never heard of them, because there's so many niches that if you're not in that bubble, you don't hear of them. And that's amazing to have a whole genre where you can have bestsellers and no one's heard of them.
That's for me, because like I do Christmas romance. So many people don't know the writers, but then people go, Hallmark.
Yeah, everyone
I watch
knows
those
Hallmark.
movies. And I'm always like, Okay, like we can talk about that. I can give you books that kind of taste like a Hallmark, movie, and then people suddenly like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize when I first started, like at Flinders and was doing, the like confirmation and all that kind of stuff, the amount of people that were like, I had no idea. And I used to get emails from people who'd be like, oh my gosh, so now on Amazon, I'm seeing all these things because I looked at one of your books and there's like hundreds. And I'm like, I know. But they were so amazed. They didn't realize there was this whole thing. Like Alex, my co-supervisor at the time, was like, is there even that many books? Like, I don't even know. Like, and I was like, yeah, there's a lot. Just you wait.
More than you could ever read.
And I tried. I tried to read them all. You cannot do it.
Well, I found that, so my research is in queer historical romance, and I'm looking specifically at World War II and like Bletchley Park era. And I remember when I actually started this research in my honours year when Amy was also my supervisor. And at that time, there was almost nothing, like no fiction about Bletchley Park that wasn't like a spy novel.
Yeah.
And even then there was only a very few. Whereas now looking at the space, there's so many more. And there's a lot of those, I feel like we've talked about the like odd ways that people categorize books, but those historicals that are like women's fiction historicals.
Yeah. We can all picture the covers, I think.
Yes, this is the thing. I'd never have to, if I, publish my book, I never have to wonder what the cover will look like. Like a woman in a blue or coat and a red
and
hat.
she's facing away from the camera, looking down
she's
some
holding
street.
A suitcase. There's cobblestones.
Yeah, maybe some gold leaf on the lettering. Yeah.
Anyway, maybe a plane in the sky, just so that you know it's World War II.
Right.
And she's got pin curls and like red lips.
I was going to say red lipstick.
Red lipstick.
But there's so many of them now, and I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to read all of these? I should have done this PhD back in 2015. I would have had nothing, and I could have just been
ahead of the curve.
The good thing about romance, though, is that even if you do have to go back and read, it's not like a chore.
Yeah.
It's kind of a little bit like of a secret. Like, oh, well, at least I'm reading a romance all day long. Like, I mean, reading those. No offense to anyone who really loves the hardcore war novels and things. I just can't imagine reading them all day for pleasure.
I read those for fun. I'm like grim. My fun reading is grim.
I think like that.
But I think it's because my career is like the fun, like the light stuff often. Yeah. And then when I did my PhD and my career stuff was grim, I read romance for fun. So I've just flipped it.
Yeah, that's so funny to think of.
Whereas I've flipped to thinking more about romance, because I remember there was a point during my first PhD, Amy, when you gave me back notes for my novel and you said, why don't you make this a romance? I just sort of looked at you like, what do you mean?
But you had these two characters who were into each other.
And there's a romance subplot. It's not even a romance subplot. They don't end up together at the end of the book.
There's tension.
What do you mean? The more I think about it, because I have to go back and rewrite it anyway, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I guess it could be a romance, really. Like, it could be a romance that is a fantasy.
Their relationship seems so pivotal to the story. Yeah.
I had the similar supervisor experience with Amy.
Oh, I'm just corrupting everyone.
I'm
like a pusher.
It's just Amy, but she made a good point.
Yeah, well, because my PhD novel, when it was just a honours short story, it wasn't originally going to be primarily a romance, and I was really struggling to think of a plot to give an excuse for these characters to fall in love in. And then Amy was like, oh, you know that the love story can be the plot. And I was like, what?
Yeah, what?
Hold on.
So I wouldn't be doing my PhD at all if it wasn't for like that comment on that research,
But I do feel like I had that reaction because I wasn't deep in it yet, in the romance. I did have that reaction of like, I'm not going to write a romance. This book is going to be a fantasy book. It's not a romance book. But now I'm like, this would be a good romance book.
It would be such a good romance book. I can think of scenes right now.
Fantasy as well.
Yeah. And like you've even got
you've
all the scenes there, like the big dramatic scenes where if you just added that in, it just takes it to the next level.
And it's like practically the steps of romance, right? Now that I think about it. So you've
even got to make
every book now that I've planned, I'm like, oh, this is a romance with a fantasy.
The thing is, romance is always mixed with another genre of some kind.
Yeah, agreed.
I feel like sometimes people can think of romance as being really formulaic and in some ways potentially narratively limiting. But I actually think it is something that can really expand, like your creative writing can really expand the way that you think of stories and character.
I think what helps is it forces your character to change.
Yeah.
So you really, because, you know, you can have other kinds of plots where they don't really change. They just do a bunch of stuff. They run around and save people. And
that's what I found is that once I was writing the two main characters together and developing in the book, that was when my main character started to change, whereas she'd been so static throughout the book before that. Dang it.
And writing to formula is actually really hard. I think a lot of people think, oh, writing to formula, you've got the steps. That's easy.
I know, that's so annoying because try it. Give it a go.
Just try.
And try it and try to make it interesting.
Yeah.
And not feel formulated.
Yeah. I'm like, that is such a challenge and it's such a skill and it's like so underrated how when you actually have to conform to certain expectations, you know where it has to go. So you've really got to push your characters, you push your plot, you push everything to go to these places, and people just take that for granted, I think, about what kind of skill that takes.
And I think that's a good point, that it is about like meeting expectations of genre, which every genre has. So
including essays, doing an academic essay.
Yeah, absolutely. So that in some ways it is formulaic. In other ways, that is the promise of the genre when you tell someone it's a romance novel that they're picking up.
It's so weird because literary fiction is formulaic.
Yeah.
And I think it's a bit of a lazy academic assumption that formula is bad.
Yeah.
I'm like, whenever...
What about a sonnet? If we were talking about sonnets, they're not bad. Or iambic pentameter or...
Any kind of poetry, really, that isn't freeform.
But whenever you do, you go into these academic circles and there's people who are very open-minded and then there are people who run in an old crowd and they go, oh, but it's formula. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. And it's like... That is such a, to me, that's lazy academic take. Definitely. That is talking about something you don't know about and then acting like formula is a bad thing, as if formula doesn't run a lot of what we do, and as if the human brain itself doesn't rely on patterns.
Yeah.
That's how you are structured. That's how you're meant to be.
And we clearly enjoy it, right? Because you just have to look at how popular romance is. And all you have to do is look at the articles in our special issue to see that romance is not...
Well done, Millie. Brought it back to point.
Thank you. That there is so much to say about romance, and there are so many different things to say about romance in the sense, like, no two of our articles are about the same thing, really.
100%.
And also, we have a few articles that are kind of looking at how the genre is, like, changing and expanding, and so it's also not a static genre, which I don't think any genre really is particularly static, because...
No, because we define it by vibe, really. You try and define a genre and you can't. It's very difficult. We do it by vibe a little bit. And the vibe's always going to change because it's going to depend on what the readers are reading and what they're buying.
And what's going on in the world.
What's happening in the world is always going to affect what's going on in your genres, because your genres are always reflecting the worries or the hopes of the current times.
How do you do? So you do climate romance, and that's like your article text is.
I'm doing that article. I'm only just challenging myself during my study leave to actually try and write a climate romance.
But how do you were saying before, like when I'm doing romance, I go to the heavy stuff, and when I do the heavy stuff, I go to the romance. How does climate romance, like how does climate fit in there? Because it's kind of like...
well, it's definitely, I mean, it's going to be my usual Amy Matthews kind of book, but then... I mean, part of it's making it visible, because like part of what we're saying is, I mean, Alex Cothran always says you can't write about the future without mentioning climate change. So if you're writing futurism, but you can't write about the present without mentioning climate change, really.
True.
So
I do believe that.
I want to see how it intersects with contemporary life, I guess, and hope. Because the thing about we wrote in our article in the special issue about Sally Rooney's book. Now I'm not going to remember. Oh, Beautiful World. That one.
Beautiful World, Where Are You?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's where my brain is. Sorry, guys. We wrote about how her book is so much about people grappling with the existential crisis and sort of getting to a point where they still hook up and have kids. Because what else are you going to do? You're a human being in the world. Are you just going to sit in a corner and be in despair for your entire life?
See, now that that's the other thing about studying any kind of literary study, though, is that you start to recognize things when you're just watching stuff for fun. So that
Yeah, there is no brain off time anymore.
the reproductive futurism trope is now something that I can't stop seeing. And not
everywhere.
just in romance, not just in romance,
everywhere.
in all sorts of stories where the end of the story will end with like a baby or a child or a pregnancy or just something that has that element of reproductive futurism in it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things the article was really about what happens when you bring romance into writing about the climate, because romance is, and this is what Kathleen's work is really about, is about all these elements of humanity that we see as positive, like care, community,
Comfort.
being entangled with other humans, and also that happy ending and joy, like trying to find a way, like, you know, some people would say if you're writing about the climate, how can you end on a high point? And it's like, but also how are you going to imagine change in the future if you don't have a high, if you don't have joy? Like joy must be in our future somewhere, surely. I refuse to believe it's not, even when you read the paper in the morning at the moment. And I refuse to believe that we're not going to also care for each other. Like you look at people in the world, you can look at people in some of the worst conditions at the moment, in wars, in climate crisis, in all kinds of situations, and what's their number one concern is caring for the people they love. Yeah. And so I think love is always central to the human experience, except for psychopaths. But most of the human race is kind of striving to find love, take care of the people they love. And I think that is interesting to me in how we can write stories of love and romance that incorporate the climate crisis.
And we know this, but Amy's not just talking about romantic love.
No.
We know that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know best stuff.
Yeah.
For the audience.
Yeah, love for parents, friends, kids.
Yeah, caring for yourself,
your community.
your family, your community.
Yeah, and country, right? Like I think that's what's really interesting is, so there's this book I really loved by Daniel Sherrill called Warmth, and it's about coming of age in the age of climate. And the whole book is written to his imagined child, so it totally works for reproductive futurism. And about his kind of struggle, like does he want to bring a kid into this world and what does that mean? And he kind of talks about his grandmother living through Hurricane Sandy and her house, like her flat being threatened. And he actually got a grant to come out here to South Australia I think he worked with the James Coetzee Centre at the University of Adelaide. And he went and did walking country with Professor Stephen Mukey, where they go out into country with First Nations people and they walk country and they learn about country. And it's about responsibility too. Like First Nations people will have a totem animal. They're responsible for that animal. So if you're, say it's the Murray magpie and you see a hurt Murray magpie, you're responsible for that. You stop, you care for the bird. So he's kind of intercut with him going on that walking trip, thinking about country, thinking about future, and in the end he kind of comes to he's writing to this child and sort of saying, I refuse to believe that all roads lead to despair. And it's a really good book if anyone wants to look it up. But yeah, that's been a touchstone for me, I think.
It's lovely. Yeah. So how does hope intersect with Christmas romances specifically?
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Right.
It is.
Right.
And do you know what?
Christmas is like a hopeful,
do you know what's a
beautiful
good
time and
entry
stuff,
point there? It's because Kathleen kind of started around the COVID years.
Yeah.
It's
it was
like,
inspired a huge part of why I wanted to do the project.
And watching how COVID supercharged everyone's love of Christmas, right? Like you could talk about that a little bit, maybe about how it moved the start of the Hallmark Christmas season so much earlier because we just want Christmas now.
Yeah, well, something that people were doing during the pandemic was like a lot of them were trapped at home and there was a lot of isolation and a lot of people were craving, I think, places and comforts that gave you a little bit of what it was to be connected and to be with people and to feel that kind of hope and connection and love.
But I would note that
they would watch Christmas movies.
Yeah.
It would be July and they'd be like, I'm watching Christmas movies. Some people would be like, there's like articles and stuff be like, I put up my Christmas tree because I just wanted to feel a little bit more joy in my household.
Right.
And
that's what you had access to.
Yeah. And that's it. Like you can kind of create your own. People got creative. And I think that there was a leap in the kind of Christmas books that were coming out, like Christmas romance, to me, there's always been a lot, but the type, it kind of goes from, I don't want to say this in a way that sounds negative because it's not, but they're sort of more like the category romances, the Mills and Boons and the Harlequins that were always sort of there, but you sort of started seeing it in like the more contemporary spaces where it hadn't been before, which also opens up to other types of celebrations around Christmas and Yule, and which tomorrow is Yule. But things like that kind of bring a lot more variety, which is what we're always looking for, to diversify in our romance. So it's kind of opened up this window as well, because in 2020, which obviously first year of the pandemic, that was the first year that a contemporary Christmas romance made it onto Goodreads top 20 of the year or something like that. And it was Christina Lauren, our friends Christina Lauren, in a Holidays. They were like number 14 on the list, and it's the first time one had been on there. And so that was, to me, when I noticed that and I seen all this stuff going on in the media and people talking about, you know, where does the joy come from? And they would talk about comedies a lot, but we know romance has this huge history with comedy as well. And so it was like a little light bulb went off for me of going, I think there's something here. And a natural leaning with lit, because I'm lit based. I also have a creative writing degree, but I am doing lit studies and my thesis is lit studies based. But the natural thing with critique is usually to pull it apart and find what's going on. And it usually has a bit of a negative slant. It's often sort of like, and you see it with undergrads in particular, that they automatically go to what's wrong with it.
Because it gives you something to grab hold of. Right?
Yeah, it's like that's the easier introduction to literary thinking. And that's fine. It's also valid and it does a lot. But I really, it was really important to me to find a way to find value in the positive, which led me right down the garden path of romance and everything it does. So for me, that's the basis of what everything is there, and way I can, and don't get me wrong, lots of people who are romance academics find a lot of hopeful things to talk about. But for me, it was a way to make a whole thesis about something positive and the value in that, in really ripping apart what we get out of that connection. And you're right, it's exactly it. It's not like, yes, I'm using romance and there is a traditional happy ever after to that, but that can mean a lot of things, because Christmas doesn't necessarily just mean a traditional heteronormative romantic. It's also about bringing all kinds of people together to find that connection and hope.
I'm wondering about home. Like, it really is about that idea of a home.
Yes.
As someone who loves Christmas movies, everything you're saying is resonating. I'm thinking like, yes, it's always about going home or coming home or finding a new home.
Creating a home.
Is that finding your place in the world?
Yeah, and it's about getting your people, and it's almost always about community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Warmth.
Community is the number one thing that everything I've read, watched, whatever, and I've done 100 books and 100 movies just for the thesis, which I obviously do more outside of that because I just consume it. But community is the one thing that they all universally have in common.
Yeah.
Is that it's always community, and it's whether it's community for a town or whether it's community for people. You can have the tropes of just two people in a cabin and things like that, and you can still, there's community there. They talk about it.
Do you know what I'm thinking while you're talking is, because 2020, obviously the other things we saw during COVID, like Schitt's Creek was huge, and Bridgerton like launched around Christmas time in 2020. But I always think of the Christmas episode of Schitt's Creek, of Merry Christmas Johnny Rose or whatever it is. Yeah. Happy Christmas Johnny Rose.
Such a good episode.
But that's got everything, right? Where they're in this motel in this small town and they've created a community and everyone comes together to give him his Christmas with like a shit Christmas tree and like all the things. Yeah. But it's got all the feelings you want of like, that's their home, that one room, all the people. You've got kind of romances and love and all those things.
And he's Jewish too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So it's not even like it's something that they've created their own version of it, which we see that a lot in TV too. But it's this like thing where they've created their whole version that they then had to downgrade into this new version, but they still find all they wanted was that connection and they found it.
It's true, because when you talk about Christmas, obviously people are thinking the very traditional Christmas, but you're saying it's not just about that image of it. There's a lot of different kinds of Christmases that you can have. Yeah.
And Christmas became a cultural metonym for home family, these moments where we come back and pay attention to home and family.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think your whole research is such a great example of what we're talking about when we're talking about romance academic research, because it is a genre, and something especially like Christmas romances, people are like, oh, that's light and fluffy, that's the I don't think genre, but it's not. There's so much at work in it that and there is a lot of value in pulling apart what that work is, and what it's actually giving us and why people are drawn to it, in a way that, like, sometimes I feel like, I mean, I wouldn't know. I'm only a baby academic, but sometimes
I think we all are still.
I mean, like, sometimes there's this idea that it's like, okay, this romance as a whole is not literary enough to warrant this kind of investigation, or like, and a specific, especially like this happy Hallmark movie type of romance. Like, oh no, that's just silly. There's nothing happening there, but there's always something happening.
You can't tell me there's not stuff happening in Hot Frosty. There's a lot to talk about there.
Oh, I could talk a lot about it. But that's an anxiety
Yeah.
I have, to be honest, because it's not just romance, right? Like, you already come into a room, you know, and it's like, oh, you're a romance academic. Immediately, you're often put on the back foot. If you say you're a Christmas romance academic, people are like, really?
Yeah, I can imagine.
But one of my whole chapters is about war. So I'm like, you know, there's
it is that deep.
yeah. I was like, I can go there, guys. Like,
Yeah.
And I think that's almost a nice thing when people underestimate you. And I think that's the thing about romance is I take a great deal of pleasure in proving people wrong.
I think if you add in creative writing, it's even worse, because I think people really don't take creative writing scholarship that seriously.
It's probably the only reason why they'll stand there and listen to me is because I say I'm doing it from a literary perspective. So like, oh, there must be something there then.
I also want to reassure all our listeners and viewers that Kathleen will be back to talk Christmas when we do Christmas.
I know I should shelve some of this,
We're
right?
we're
I'm
going
sure
to
there's always going to be more to
Wrap
say.
it up.
though.
Well,
Put it in
actually,
the
I'm just
Christmas
going to do a
box.
spoiler
Save
right
it.
now. November, actually, we're going to do Christmas to lead you into the Christmas season. We're not going to wait till December. We're going to do it in November so that we can give
Why
you
not
some
October,
recs.
Amy, like Hallmark?
Another thing I was thinking, actually, as you were talking, is that, like you said, you know, academia, a lot of it is very negative because just people trend to that when you're critiquing things. But, and I've not read all of it, again, baby academic and even more baby romance academic. But the stuff that I've read, I feel like in romance academia does trend more to the positive. And I wonder if that's because maybe, you know, you do have to be more defensive because you're having to, already you're having to justify why you're talking about romance. But I do feel like there's less if you're reading the right stuff. And I'm not talking about the people who get in there and they're like, romance is crap, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about real romance scholars. I feel like so much of it is
Fake ones.
positive, like positive, and here's what romance is doing and why that's good, or here's what, you know, these genres mean and why that's cool. So much of it is more positive, whereas in the greater academic sphere, so much of it is negative critique.
And that's a fairly still new concept, even in the romance academic. And romance academics is baby compared to a lot of academics. It's been there for a while now. We're probably talking 40, 50 years. But in the grand scheme of literary critique, that's actually still fairly baby. But it didn't start positive. And like, you read some of the original critiques and like that has its place and there is some relevance and things there too. But a lot of it didn't start where it is now.
Yeah.
It is still a fairly modern concept. And I think Pamela Regis is one of those really turning points where people stopped trying to find all the reasons why, like, say, take from a heteronormative perspective. It was so bad because it was just making women feel like they should get married and they should be going into the, you know.
The
you guys
Germaine
get it.
Greer School of Criticism.
And it's very easy to fall into some of those critiques. But then when Pamela Regis went, oh, let's actually look at romance as something that could be literarily studied from a more formulaic and let's pull that apart and what that's doing. It almost gave everyone permission to look at it a different way. And now you have all these amazing scholars who have finally been able to say, oh my gosh, I want to talk about this. This is something I'm passionate about. And passion leads to positivity a lot of the time.
Don't you think too, though, it's a body of work thing, right? Like if you've got 100 years of writing on Emily Bronte, there's a lot of positive stuff written first. Like there's a lot of analysis of or Austen or like someone who's been around a long time. And then the critiques came as we start to get to post-colonialism, critical race, like other readings of things. Whereas with romance, it's almost like you have to say, hold on, we've got to actually define what it is first. What are the formal features of it? What does it look like? What's it doing before you can jump the gun and get to
And the other thing
else.
that I found that I always want to cut this bit from anything I write is the obligatory defense of why you're even doing romance research.
I think we can cut it now.
Yeah.
I really feel like
I
we
really
should
feel
stop
like that,
doing
but
it.
I'm like, is that just because I talk to so many other romance
Yeah.
scholars all the time, and we're sick of writing the same paragraph with the same statistics about how of a huge impactful genre it is?
But you can literally walk into so many rooms where people are still so shocked by that.
Yeah.
They're just taken aback. And we take it for granted now because we've been saying it for so long. But you do. You just walk into rooms and people are still like, oh.
But why would you study that? And it's like, what do you mean why?
That's true. In our introduction for the text special issue, I think we had a section we were writing. We were like, well, romance makes this much money and romance academia this. And then we sort of just went, do we still need to do this?
Let's
I don't
not.
know that we do.
Let's just not anymore.
But it is, like you said, it's a body of work thing also in that we can now just point to that body of work and say, look, people have been doing this for a long time. We are now building on that. We're not going to justify ourselves anymore.
And I think also you don't necessarily have to pick a position, right? You can just go, look at this thing that's happening, what's happening here. Because one thing I've been thinking about, which is not an issue, but it should be, is the move of point of view. You know, for like decades, the point of view in romance, except in like chick lit like Bridget Jones, has been third person. And the thinking was often that third person is a more invisible form that allows projection. But since the rise of fan fiction, the dominant form is first person because of self-insert, and it's a familiar voice. But first person is a fairly new thing to mainstream romance. And it's like you've had this major formal shift that we're not really writing about yet. So I think there's heaps where you can make an observation, but it doesn't necessarily have a value judgment at all, whether it's good or bad or critical or not critical.
Just a statement of fact.
Yeah, look at this thing.
Discuss.
And I wonder how much of that analysis of which point of view is the one that you can self-impose your experience on is that no matter what point of view someone's writing a romance in, people are going to have that analysis of it. Like, you know, like maybe that's not what it's doing at all.
Maybe
maybe this is a bias from the fact that it's romance novels. They're like, oh, therefore third person you can project on. No, actually it's first person that you project on.
That's true.
And actually maybe everyone's different. And
You said the body of work thing and we have to define what it is first, etc., etc. But I do think that romance suffers from having to defend itself on all fronts.
Yeah.
At the same time that other genres haven't had to do. And so you are having to talk about race and about gender in romance at the same time as you are trying to define what romance is.
But I feel like something that you were saying, and it leads back to like the text introduction, where it's like we didn't want to do that kind of defensive position that you default into with romance, because it's like, you know what, we're sick of that. We're over that. We're not going to apologise for being here. We're not going to explain ourselves. This is what we're doing. If you're interested, have a read. There's a lot of really intelligent things being said in this special edition.
Yep.
And if you're interested in intelligent things, have a read. Like, you shouldn't have to explain that. Like, it is. But we fall back into the habit of it because so many people just seem to demand it.
I do think that is an academic thing as well, just at a base level, is that you're always having, or maybe that's just because we all do popular like genre, I guess, maybe because my PhD was linked to genre as well. So maybe that is just because I felt I had to justify why I was talking about it. But I do think it's a little bit of an academic thing as well. You have to be like, well, here's why I think what I have to say is important.
Yeah, I do think that is an academic thing, that rationale. Give us the rationale for why you're doing this. Yeah. And it's funny, sometimes you just say, because I want to.
Exactly.
Why not?
But you like it, right?
Other people will think it's interesting.
And we've said that romance is a very young field of scholarship, and it's a baby field of scholarship, and in some ways we are the reproductive futurism baby.
We are
academia.
She did it. She brought it back around.
Wow, that was very impressive.
Doing my job for me. I appreciate it. Anyway, we are actually out of time, so well done, Justina.
Yeah, well done. What a note to end it on.
We will definitely be having Kathleen Stanley back to talk to us about Christmas romance and other things, because you're actually an expert on very many things. And thanks for joining us today, Justina and Millie.
Thank you
And
for having us.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
And if you'd like to check out our special issue, it's with Text, which is the Journal of Writing and Writing Courses. And it is called, I'm trying to remember what I called it, Trope Actually and Degrees of Love, something like that. You can look it for it. It's the romance special issue.
We can link it in.
Yeah, we'll link it in the
our
notes.
socials when it happens.
Isn't it romantic?
No, I changed it.
Oh no!
I changed it. I
and
went
we
rogue.
Oh my god! I didn't know. Okay.
And we should respruik the Book of the Month book. For
Oh,
book club.
and yeah, thank you. So, I'm really sorry, guys.
That's all right.
This is what happens when I'm on study leave. I'm like giving up. Our book of the month is Jodi McAlister's An Academic Affair. We have an interview with Jodi next week, if you'd like to listen, which was really interesting. So Jodi is an academic at Deakin University. She studies popular fictions, romance and women's fiction, and she is a rom-com author. The book is just like all the tropes. It's amazing. It's doing so many tropes.
Academic rivals to lovers. Is
Yeah.
the trope.
And it also has a sort of fake marriage. It's doing all kinds of
fake
things.
marriage,
Forced proximity.
Wine. If you like wine, there's a lot
Yeah.
of wine there.
I'm in.
So if you'd like to grab the book, An Academic Affair, and read along, we'll be having book club in a couple of weeks and we will talk about it with you. So thanks for joining us and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.